The storm raged like the sky itself was furious. Rain smashing against rooftops, wind howling through trees, lightning flickering over the wealthy, gated neighborhood controlled by the strict HOA. A place where rules were louder than kindness and outsiders were treated like danger. Inside her small, quiet house, Anna sat alone at her kitchen table, staring at the dim ceiling light, listening to the storm beat harder and harder, feeling a strange heaviness in her chest she couldn't explain, like the night was holding its breath for something. She lived a simple life, unnoticed, unimportant in the eyes of the HOA. A woman who minded her business, paid her fees, and stayed silent because silence was safer here. People who asked questions were fined, punished, sometimes even pushed out. But tonight, something pulled her to the window, a sudden instinct, like a whisper telling her to look outside. When she parted the curtains, her heart froze. Through the sheets of rain, she saw a man stumbling near the neighborhood gate, soaked to the bone. His uniform dark and heavy with water, a limp in his leg making every step look painful. He was a black soldier, and even though she couldn't hear him, she could see the exhaustion in the way his body bent forward, like he was fighting both the storm and his own weakness. The HOA guards stood there under umbrellas, dry and comfortable, blocking him, waving him away as if he were trash. She saw one guard shake his head, shouting something she could barely read from his lips. "Threat! Leave!" The soldier tried to steady himself, gripping the metal post, his chest rising and falling fast. But instead of helping, the guards turned their backs, laughing, stepping inside the guard booth, leaving him alone in the freezing rain. Anna felt her heart twist painfully, her hands shaking as she watched him drop to one knee, his hand gripping his soaked uniform like he was trying not to collapse. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She just grabbed her coat, rushed out into the storm, rain slapping her face, wind trying to push her back. Her slippers splashed through puddles as she ran toward him, her voice shaking. "Sir, please, sit. Sit down. Let me help you." The soldier lifted his head slowly, rain dripping from his eyelashes, his expression dazed, confused, vulnerable in a way that made Anna's chest ache. She slid her coat around his shoulders, wrapping him in warmth, guiding him gently toward her porch. The HOA guards glared from a distance, one of them shouting, "Ma'am, stop. HOA rules. No strangers." But Anna ignored them, her voice trembling. "He's hurt. He needs help." The soldier didn't speak. Not one word. He only nodded with tired eyes filled with a kind of pain she had never seen before, pain deeper than injury. She led him onto the porch, letting him sit, his breath shaky, his hands trembling as she handed him a glass of water. He took it slowly, fingers cold, knuckles white, sipping like every drop was a struggle. She knelt beside him, her voice soft, gentle. "What happened? What's your name? Do you need a doctor?" But he just stared forward, eyes distant, jaw clenched like he was fighting memories he couldn't say out loud. For a moment, lightning flashed, lighting up his face, and Anna noticed a fresh bruise near his temple, like he had been hurt recently, not by accident, but by force. Fear crept into her stomach. What if someone had attacked him? What if he was running from something? Before she could ask again, he slowly pushed himself up, wobbling on his injured leg. She reached out. "Wait, let me call someone." But he shook his head, lifted one hand in a silent thank you, and stepped off the porch. The storm swallowed him, his figure disappearing into darkness, leaving Anna standing in the rain with her heart pounding, her coat soaked, her fingers shaking. That night she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his exhausted stare, the limp, the bruise, the silence. She kept replaying the moment he left, wondering if he was safe, wondering why he didn't speak, wondering what kind of soldier walks through the night alone in the middle of a storm, and why the HOA guards were so quick to reject him, almost afraid of him. When morning finally came, gray and cold, Anna stepped outside to breathe, but froze when she saw a white paper taped to her door. Her stomach dropped. She ripped it off with trembling hands and read the bold words. "Helping strangers violates HOA rules. Next time will result in a fine and review of residency status." Her heart slammed in her chest. Residency review. That meant eviction, threat, punishment, all for kindness. She looked around, seeing neighbors peek from windows, whispering, judging, afraid to come near her. The HOA guards smirked from the gate, satisfied, like they had won. Anna went back inside, feeling small, scared, confused. She sat on her couch, staring at the warning letter, trying to calm her breathing. She whispered to herself, I did nothing wrong. But in this neighborhood, right and wrong didn't matter. Control did. Silence did. Rules did. She held the letter tighter, her hands shaking with a mix of anger and fear. Why would helping a wounded man be considered a crime? Why was the HOA so desperate to keep outsiders away? What were they hiding? Her thoughts spiraled until suddenly, 3 loud knocks slammed against her front door, so powerful they rattled the picture frames on the wall. She jumped, heart racing, breath catching in her throat. Another knock, harder this time. Whoever was outside wasn't waiting. She hesitated, staring at the door, fear prickling her skin. Was it the HOA? Were they here to punish her? Evict her? Fine her? Slowly, she reached for the doorknob, her fingers trembling as she turned it. The door creaked open, and her breath stopped completely. There he was, the soldier, standing on her porch. But this time he wasn't soaked or limping. He stood tall, strong, steady, wearing a crisp military uniform, medals shining on his chest, authority radiating from every inch of him. His eyes were clear now, sharp, focused. And behind him, 2 black SUVs waited, engines running, doors open like he hadn't just arrived. He had come with purpose. Anna's mouth fell open, her voice barely a whisper. You came back. The soldier looked at her with calm, powerful eyes, and for the first time he spoke. His voice deep, steady, carrying weight. Ma'am, we need to talk. And in that moment, Anna felt it deep in her soul. Whatever her life had been before this moment, it was about to change forever. The storm outside had passed, but a much bigger storm was about to begin. Anna stood frozen in the doorway, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the rain dripping from the roof, and for a long moment she just stared at the soldier, unable to speak, unable to move, because the man who had been weak and broken the night before was now standing straight-backed, steady, powerful in his uniform, his presence commanding the air around him. Like he didn't just survive the storm, he owned it. His eyes, no longer clouded with exhaustion, locked onto hers with a seriousness that sent chills down her spine, and she felt her breath tremble as he stepped forward, his voice low but firm. Thank you for helping me. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made her chest ache, because no one in this neighborhood ever thanked kindness. Kindness was treated like a crime here. She tried to answer, her voice shaky. You were hurt. Anyone would have helped. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. The guards didn't help. The neighbors hid. Only she stepped out into the storm. The soldier glanced toward the warning letter still crumpled in her hand, and his jaw tightened, anger flickering in his eyes. Not wild anger, but controlled, sharp, dangerous. They threatened you, he said quietly. Anna swallowed hard, looking down, embarrassed, afraid, confused all at once. It's just the HOA. They're strict. He shook his head slowly, rain still clinging to the edge of his uniform. Strict is one thing. This is something else. Before she could ask what he meant, one of the SUV doors opened, and 2 men stepped out, also in uniform, wearing badges she didn't recognize. Their expressions serious, scanning the neighborhood like they were searching for threats. Anna's stomach twisted with anxiety. Why were military vehicles here? Why were there officers on her quiet street? Why was her porch suddenly the center of attention? The soldier turned back to her, his voice softer now, almost gentle, but still heavy with urgency. My name is Sergeant Marcus Hale. Anna repeated it quietly in her mind, the name feeling strange and powerful, like she had just been handed a puzzle piece. Marcus continued, Last night, I wasn't just lost in the storm. I was returning from deployment. Deployment. War. Danger. His limp, his bruise, his silence. It all made sense and yet didn't. She whispered, "Why were you here? In this neighborhood?" Marcus's eyes darkened, and he lowered his voice. "I was following a lead. Something about this HOA." A cold shiver crawled up her spine. The HOA? The same group that fined people for mailbox height, lawn color, and Christmas lights? The same people who threatened her for helping him? "A lead?" she echoed, her voice thin. Marcus nodded, glancing around as if every window might be watching. This neighborhood was flagged over a year ago. Complaints, patterns, cases of discrimination, forced removals. Anna felt her knees weaken, because she had heard rumors. Families who vanished overnight, houses that were sold back to the HO, neighbors who packed up and left without saying goodbye. But she always thought they chose to leave, or couldn't afford payments, or broke rules. Marcus stepped closer, his voice quieter but sharper. "They called me a threat last night because they knew who I was." Anna's breath caught. "You mean, they recognized you?" He held her gaze for a long, heavy moment, then said, "They tried to stop me from entering because they knew I was investigating them." The air around her seemed to collapse in on itself. Her skin prickled with fear. This wasn't about a stranger in the rain. This wasn't about rules. This was about something hidden, something dangerous, something the HOA would do anything to protect. She stumbled back a step, whispering, "I shouldn't be involved in this." Marcus's expression softened, but his voice stayed firm. "You already are." Those words struck her like a bolt of lightning. Her heart hammered so fast it hurt. "Because I helped you?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "Because they saw you help me." The reality hit her like ice. The cameras, the guards, the letter, the knock. All of it wasn't just punishment, it was fear. Fear of her kindness. Fear of her witness. Fear of what she saw. Marcus looked toward the HOA office across the street, his eyes narrowing, and Anna followed his gaze, noticing for the first time how the security cameras faced outward. Not to protect homes, but to monitor people. How the guards weren't patrolling for safety, but for control. Marcus leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Last night, someone didn't want me alive." Anna's blood turned cold. Her voice cracked. "You mean, someone attacked you?" Marcus didn't answer directly. He simply pulled back the collar of his uniform, just enough to reveal a fresh bruise on his neck, dark, severe, shaped like a grip. A hand. A struggle. Anna covered her mouth, horrified. "Oh my God!" Marcus let the collar drop, his eyes steady. "I didn't fall in the rain. I was pushed." Anna's heart nearly stopped. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. Someone tried to harm him, and the HOA guards didn't help because they weren't surprised. They were part of it. She felt her legs trembling, gripping the doorframe to steady herself, whispering, "Why come back here? Why come to me?" Marcus looked at her with a gaze that was heavy with truth. "Because you didn't turn away." The words hit her so deeply she felt tears prick her eyes. In a neighborhood full of people afraid to be human, she had been the only one who acted like a person, not a rule. Marcus continued, "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to protect you." Anna blinked, shocked, confused. "Protect me? From what?" Marcus took a slow breath, the wind ruffling the edge of his uniform, his voice low and steady. "From them." He nodded toward the HOA building, where, at that exact moment, Anna noticed something she hadn't seen earlier. One of the HOA guards was standing in the window, staring directly at her porch. No emotion, no movement, just watching. Watching like he knew something she didn't. Watching like she was no longer just a resident. Watching like she was now a problem. Marcus stepped back slightly, giving her space, but his tone was urgent. "The HOA isn't what you think it is, and what they started last night isn't over." Anna felt something break inside her. Fear mixing with disbelief mixing with realization. Her quiet life wasn't safe anymore. Her home wasn't safe. Her silence wasn't protection. Marcus looked her in the eyes one last time and said, "I need you to trust me." And before she could respond, Before she could even breathe, one of the SUV radios crackled, a sharp static noise slicing through the air, and a voice said, "Sergeant Hale, movement inside the HOA office. They're mobilizing, preparing, acting. Against who?" Marcus's eyes hardened. "It's starting." Anna felt the floor tilt beneath her, her pulse racing as she whispered, "What's starting?" Marcus looked toward the office, toward the neighborhood that suddenly felt like a trap, and answered in a voice that chilled her to the bone, "A cover-up." And Anna knew, in that terrifying moment, that last night wasn't a coincidence. It was the beginning of a battle she never asked for, but couldn't escape now. The storm outside had ended. Anna could feel her heartbeat shaking through her whole body as Marcus stepped away from the door. His eyes locked on the HOA office like he was facing an invisible enemy, and she stood there gripping the edge of the doorway, trying to calm her breathing but failing because every second felt heavier, darker, more dangerous. Like the neighborhood she once thought was safe had turned into a place she didn't recognize. The two black SUVs remained parked like silent guards, engines humming, headlights off, men inside speaking into radios, watching every corner like a threat could come from anywhere. Anna whispered, barely able to form words, "What do they want?" But Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked closer to the porch railing, scanning the streets, his face carved with tension, his jaw tight, his voice low when he finally spoke. "They want control. They want silence." That word, silence, echoed in Anna's mind like a warning, and she suddenly remembered every time neighbors disappeared without explanation. Every time someone tried to complain and was suddenly gone. Every house that changed hands overnight. Every rumor she ignored because she didn't want trouble, and the realization made her stomach twist with nausea. Maybe people didn't move away. Maybe they were pushed out. She whispered shakily, "Are they dangerous?" Marcus turned, his eyes meeting hers with a seriousness that made her knees weaken. "They're powerful and desperate." Before she could ask more, her phone vibrated sharply in her pocket, and she pulled it out only to see a notification that sent chills through her. An HOA message. "Residents are advised to stay inside. Do not interact with unfamiliar personnel." The timing was too perfect, too direct, almost like it was aimed at her. Marcus saw the message on her screen and his expression darkened. "They're trying to isolate you." Anna's throat tightened, fear rising like a wave, and she stepped back into her living room, suddenly hyper-aware of how small her house was, how thin the walls felt, how exposed she was. The storm outside was gone, but the air felt heavier now, like danger was pressing against the windows. Before she could close the door, a loud slam echoed from across the street. One of the HOA guards locking the office gate, pulling down metal shutters like they were sealing themselves inside a bunker. Another guard appeared beside him, speaking rapidly into a radio, glancing toward Anna's house over and over again. Marcus stepped closer to her, his voice firm but calm. "Anna, listen to me. Last night wasn't random. I came here because this HOA has been under investigation for months." Anna blinked, her voice cracking. "For what?" Marcus took a slow breath, like he was choosing his words carefully. "For discrimination, harassment, financial fraud, and possibly forced removals." Forced removals. The words slammed into her like ice water. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "No, that can't be true. This is just a housing association." Marcus's voice was steady, but his eyes were filled with a pain she didn't understand yet. "It's not just that. Not anymore." He stepped further into the house, lowering his voice. "Anna, last night when you helped me, someone saw it. Someone tried to take me out before I could report back." Anna backed away slowly, gripping the arm of her couch, her voice trembling. "Take you out? You mean kill you?" Marcus didn't answer verbally. He didn't need to, because the silence was enough. His eyes said yes. Her breath shattered. Her legs felt weak, and she sank into the nearest chair, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She whispered, "Why would they do that? Why would an HOA do that?" Marcus crouched down so he was eye level with her, his voice low, steady, intense. Because they weren't afraid of me as a stranger. They were afraid of me as a soldier. She stared at him, tears gathering in her eyes. What did they think you were going to do? Marcus held her gaze. Expose them. At that exact moment, a loud knock hit her back door. Sharp, aggressive, impatient, and Anna nearly jumped out of her seat, her heart slamming against her ribs. Marcus stood instantly, hand instinctively reaching toward his hip where a weapon might have been. His posture switching from calm to alert in one breath. Stay here, he ordered softly, and walked toward the kitchen door. Anna watched him move, steady, controlled, like a man who had lived through danger before. The knock came again, harder, and Anna covered her mouth, fighting the urge to scream. Marcus peered through the side window without touching the curtains, his face tightening. He turned back to Anna and whispered, HOA board member. Anna's stomach dropped. Why were they at her back door? Why not the front? Why come unannounced? The knocking stopped, but footsteps began circling the house slowly, like someone was inspecting every wall, every window, every opening. Marcus motioned her away from the windows, guiding her to the center of the room. She whispered, terrified, What are they doing? He answered quietly, Checking if you're alone. Her breath hitched, and suddenly, she remembered the camera on the street lamp outside, always pointed at her porch, always blinking red. She had always assumed it was for crime prevention. Now she wondered if it was to monitor residents. Marcus pulled out a folded document from inside his jacket and placed it on her table. This is a partial report, he explained. It mentions dozens of complaints filed by residents, but every complaint disappears. Records erased. People silenced. Anna picked it up with trembling fingers, eyes scanning the pages. Names she didn't recognize, dates she did, and then a note at the bottom. Subject relocated due to non-compliance. She whispered, Relocated? Marcus shook his head slowly. Evicted. Forced out. Some without warning. Anna felt tears spill down her cheeks, the fear now mixing with anger. How is this allowed? Marcus stood, jaw clenched. Because no one ever fights them. No one ever questions them. People are scared. She nodded slowly because she understood that fear now. She had lived in silence because she thought silence kept her safe. But now she saw the truth. Silence protected them, not her. Suddenly, a loud beep echoed outside. A gate opening, and Anna rushed to the window just in time to see a third vehicle entering the neighborhood. This one black and unmarked, with tinted windows so dark she couldn't see inside. Marcus's voice turned sharp. That's not military. She felt her heart drop. Then who is it? Marcus didn't take his eyes off the car. People the HOA calls when they want something handled. Anna stumbled backward, her breath shaking, her voice barely a whisper. Handled. Marcus turned toward her, his tone deadly serious. We don't have much time. They think you know more than you do. Her chest tightened, panic rising. I don't know anything. Marcus nodded. But they think you helped me because you're involved. And that makes you a target. A tear slid down her cheek as she whispered, I just gave you water. Marcus stepped closer, voice softer now. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness is seen as defiance by people who rule through fear. Outside, the unmarked car parked near the HOA office, and 3 men stepped out, dressed in dark clothing, no uniforms, no badges, walking with purpose, heading straight toward her street. Marcus looked back at Anna, determination burning in his eyes. Listen to me, whatever happens next. Do not open the door for anyone but me. Anna nodded, her entire body trembling, her voice breaking. What are they going to do? Marcus exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the approaching figures. Whatever it takes, to keep their secret buried. Anna felt like the walls of her house were closing in, every breath tighter than the last as Marcus watched the 3 dark-clothed men walk slowly down her street like hunters who already knew where their prey was hiding. And she gripped the back of a chair just to stay standing, her legs shaking so badly she feared they would give out. Marcus's voice was low but fierce. We need to move away from the windows. And he guided her toward the hallway, his hands steady on her shoulder, his presence the only thing keeping her from collapsing under the weight of fear pressing into her chest. As they reached the middle of the house, Anna heard something she hadn't noticed before. A faint buzzing, like static, coming from the vents. Marcus tilted his head, listening, his expression sharpening. They're running surveillance. Anna's heart dropped. How? Inside my home? Marcus nodded grimly. This HOA doesn't just watch the streets. They monitor houses they consider high risk. High risk, just because she offered a stranger water. Just because she cared. The thought made tears burn behind her eyes, her voice breaking. How can kindness make someone a threat? Marcus looked at her, his eyes heavy with truth. To people obsessed with control, kindness is rebellion. Before she could respond, a sudden crackle sounded outside, like gravel shifting under heavy boots, and then the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching her front door. Slow, heavy, confident. Her breath froze. Marcus's posture changed instantly, his back straight, muscles tight, eyes sharp like a soldier stepping onto a battlefield. He motioned for her to stay silent. The footsteps stopped directly in front of her house. A long moment passed, too long, until a firm knock slammed into the door, deep and deliberate, vibrating through the floor. Anna flinched, her hands flying to her mouth to keep from crying out. The knock came again, louder this time, followed by a voice muffled through the wood. HOA inspection. Open the door. But something was wrong. There was no official tone. No paperwork sliding under the door. No identification. Just a demand, cold and threatening. Marcus shook his head slowly, whispering, "That's not an inspection." The doorknob rattled violently, like someone was testing it, checking if it was locked. Anna's heart pounded so hard she thought her ribs might crack. She backed deeper into the hallway, whispering, "They can't just come in." Marcus's voice was quiet but tense. "They can if they think you're violating rules. They've done it before." Anna stared at him, horrified. "Broken into homes?" Marcus nodded once, the anger in his jaw tightening. Under the excuse of safety checks, the rattling stopped suddenly, replaced by silence, thick, chilling silence that made every hair on Anna's neck stand up. Silence meant strategy. Silence meant planning. Silence meant danger. Then, from the back of the house, another sound echoed, the metallic slide of a window frame. Someone was trying to open it. Anna's breath shattered as she spun around, realizing they weren't just at the front. They were circling, surrounding, probing every weak point. Marcus's voice turned sharp. "Stay behind me." And he moved quickly toward the kitchen, his steps silent but determined. Anna followed, her fingers shaking so hard she could barely grip the wall as she peeked around the corner. She saw shadows through the frosted glass. Multiple figures outside, silhouettes shifting, hands pressed against the window. She whispered, terrified, "They're everywhere." Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a small communication device. Clicking it on, "Command, this is Sergeant Hale. We have unauthorized contact at civilian residence." Static answered. No voice, no support. Marcus's eyes darkened. "They're jamming the signal." Anna felt tears slip down her cheeks, the situation sinking deeper into her bones. She wasn't just being watched. She was being hunted. She leaned against the wall, whispering through sobs, "I don't understand. Why me? Why my house?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice grounded, steady, the anchor she needed to stay standing. "Because helping me made them think you're part of my investigation." Anna shook her head desperately. "But I'm not. I don't know anything." Marcus looked at her with a painful honesty. Sometimes fear doesn't care about truth, cares about control. Suddenly, there was a clicking noise near the front door, a lock shifting from the outside. Anna's entire body tensed. "Are they trying to get in?" Marcus nodded, his voice low, deadly calm. "Yes." Anna's breath hitched as the doorknob turned slowly, like someone was testing it again, more forcefully this time. And then a deep voice called through the door, "Ma'am, HOA emergency enforcement. Open immediately." Emergency enforcement. She had never heard that term before. Neither had Marcus. And the tone wasn't official, it was predatory. Marcus stepped closer to the door, not opening it, but listening carefully. The voice spoke again. Failure to comply will result in forced entry. Forced entry. The words hit her like a punch. She grabbed Marcus's arm, her voice trembling. They can't do that. They can't break into my home. Marcus met her eyes, his expression full of grim certainty. They've done worse. Anna's knees buckled, and she sank onto the floor, burying her face in her hands, shaking with fear. She whispered, broken, I just wanted to help someone. Marcus knelt beside her, his voice low but fierce. And that makes you braver than this whole neighborhood. She looked up at him through tears. But bravery doesn't feel like enough. Marcus nodded slowly. It isn't. Not alone. His words struck her with a strange mixture of fear and strength. She wasn't facing this because she was weak. She was facing this because she was the only one who had the courage to care. Outside, the men regrouped. Their footsteps moved away from the door, but not far. Just a few yards, like they were waiting for something. Preparing. Planning. Marcus stood and peeked through the blinds, his jaw tightening as he saw one of them lifting a radio to his mouth. Speaking into it, eyes locked on Anna's house. Marcus exhaled a long, tense breath. They're calling backup. Backup. More men. More force. More danger. Anna felt her world closing in again. What do we do? She whispered. Marcus turned toward her, eyes blazing with determination. We get evidence. We prove what they're doing. We expose them. Anna stared at him, stunned. How? Marcus reached into his jacket again and pulled out a folded USB drive, placing it on her table. This holds part of the investigation. Documents, audio, complaints, patterns. It's not everything, but it's enough to start cracks in their power. Anna stared at the tiny object, realizing it might hold the truth behind years of fear in this neighborhood. Marcus continued, They can silence voices. They can erase people. But they can't erase proof. Anna swallowed hard, wiping her tears. What do you need from me? Marcus looked directly into her eyes, his voice steady, commanding, I need you to be a witness. Her breath hitched. Witness. A word that meant danger, responsibility, exposure. She whispered, terrified. If I do that, they'll come after me. Marcus nodded slowly. They already are. Outside, a car door slammed. Another. More men arriving. More shadows gathering. And in that instant, Anna understood something she hadn't understood before. She was no longer just a resident. She was a threat to them simply because she saw them for what they were. Marcus stepped closer, offering his hand. His voice filled with both urgency and quiet strength. You're not alone anymore. She took his hand, her fingers trembling but her eyes steadier now, a spark of courage flickering beneath the fear, and just as she stood up, the power in the house flickered once, twice, then went out completely, plunging the home into darkness as someone outside whispered loudly enough to be heard through the glass. Darkness swallowed the house so fast it felt unreal, like someone had pulled a curtain over the world, and Anna's breath caught in her throat as the last bit of light vanished, leaving only the pounding of her heart and the faint echo of rain on the windows. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't think, her fingers gripping Marcus's sleeve like he was the only solid thing left in a collapsing world. Marcus didn't waste a second. His voice was low but sharp, a soldier's instinct cutting through panic. Power didn't fail. It was cut. The words hit her like ice, her chest tightening, because she understood what that meant. Someone out there wanted them blind, trapped, helpless. A soft metallic click sounded in the distance, maybe from the side gate, maybe from the front lock, maybe from somewhere inside the house. She couldn't tell, but it made her skin crawl. Marcus pulled a small flashlight from his pocket, the beam thin and weak, barely enough to light the floor in front of them. But it was something, a fragile thread of safety in the suffocating dark. He whispered, "Stay close," and she followed him down the hallway, every step slow, careful, her feet almost silent on the wooden floor. Then she heard it breathing, not hers, not Marcus's, Somewhere near the kitchen, soft but heavy, like someone trying to stay quiet. Anna froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. Marcus stopped too, raising a hand to silence her, his eyes narrowing as he turned the flashlight toward the sound. But the beam only caught the edge of the wall, shaking slightly from Anna's trembling. The breathing stopped. Silence again. Silence that felt loud, dangerous, alive. Marcus leaned closer, whispering, "They're inside." Anna's knees almost buckled. Inside. Not outside anymore. Not waiting. Not threatening. Already here. She fought the urge to cry, swallowing the fear choking her throat, whispering, "Why? Why are they doing this?" Marcus's voice carried both anger and sorrow. Because when power is built on lies, truth becomes the enemy. Before she could respond, a faint light flickered through the blinds. The headlights of another vehicle pulling onto her street, the engine rumbling like thunder. More backup, more men, more danger. The quiet neighborhood that once looked peaceful now felt like a battlefield where she was the target. Marcus pulled her toward the back of the house, whispering urgently, "We need to get the evidence out. They can destroy buildings, but they can't destroy something that's already shared." Anna stared at him, confused, her voice small. "Shared? With who?" He tapped the USB drive in his pocket. "If I get this to the right place, this HOA won't survive another day." But the sound of footsteps creaking across her living room killed the small spark of hope inside her. Someone was moving slowly, confidently, like they knew the layout of her home, like they weren't afraid of being caught. Marcus motioned for her to stay behind him, raising his flashlight and stepping forward silently. But the beam caught only empty space, an overturned cushion, and the faint outline of muddy boot prints leading deeper inside. Anna's voice cracked in terror. "They broke in!" Before Marcus could answer, a voice echoed from the living room, low and mocking. "Miss Anna, we just want to talk." Anna slapped a hand over her mouth, tears spilling from her eyes. Marcus stepped back toward her, whispering fiercely, "They're trying to scare you into opening the door or surrendering." But the voice continued, smooth and cold. "You're making things harder than they need to be. Just cooperate with the HOA. HOA. The word no longer sounded like an organization. It sounded like a threat, a weapon, a trap. Marcus clenched his jaw, whispering, "They won't leave until they get what they want." Anna wiped her tears with shaking hands, whispering, "And what do they want?" Marcus looked straight into her eyes. Silence. The word tore through her, because silence was how this neighborhood had survived. Silence from the victims, silence from the neighbors, silence from everyone too scared to speak. And now they wanted her silent too. A sudden bang rattled the front door, as if someone had kicked it hard. Anna gasped and stumbled backward, her shoulder hitting the wall. The voice outside turned harsher. "Last warning. Open up or we come in." Marcus grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the basement door near the kitchen. She didn't even know she had a basement. She had never opened it. He swung the door open, revealing steep steps descending into darkness. "Down," he whispered. Anna hesitated, terrified of going deeper into darkness, but another slam at the door made the choice for her. She descended the steps, grabbing the railing, her breath loud and shaky. Marcus close behind, closing the basement door gently but firmly. As they reached the bottom, he swept the flashlight across the room. Cement walls, old boxes, dusty furniture. Nothing special, but safer than upstairs. He turned to her, voice steady despite the chaos. "Anna, listen. What I'm about to show you. It will explain everything." He pulled out the USB drive, the small device glowing faintly in the flashlight, looking almost insignificant, yet holding the weight of 1,000 secrets. This contains files from residents who tried to report the HOA, people who were fined unfairly, harassed, pushed out, people who tried to fight and disappeared. Anna covered her mouth, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Disappeared?" Marcus nodded, pain flickering in his eyes. "And one of them was my mother." Anna stared at him, stunned, breath gone, mind spinning. Marcus continued, voice soft but broken. She tried to buy a home here years ago. They denied her, humiliated her, and when she fought back, she was forced out. She died shortly after. Anna's heart shattered. The bruise on his neck, the silence, the rage in his eyes. Suddenly it all made sense. This wasn't just a mission. This wasn't just work. This was personal. Marcus took a slow, shaky breath. I came back to finish what she couldn't. Anna felt a surge of emotion. Fear, empathy, anger, all mixing into something fierce in her chest. But before she could speak, a loud crash shook the floor above them, pieces of dust falling from the ceiling. Someone had entered the house. More footsteps, more voices, closer. The flashlight flickered, the battery draining, the beam shrinking. Marcus whispered urgently, "When this ends, the world will know the truth." Anna swallowed her fear, her voice barely audible. "And if it doesn't end?" Marcus looked up, listening to the footsteps above them. Steps that now stopped directly over the basement door, and he whispered the most terrifying answer of all. The footsteps above them grew heavier, slower, more deliberate, like the men weren't searching blindly but walking with confidence, like they already knew exactly where Anna and Marcus were hiding, and every creak of the floorboards sent a violent shiver down Anna's spine as she clung to the cold basement wall, her fingers digging into the cement just to stop herself from collapsing. The flashlight flickered weakly in Marcus's hand, its light trembling across dusty boxes and old shelves, and Anna felt her throat tighten as she whispered, "They're going to find us?" Marcus shook his head slowly, his voice low but steady. "Not if we move first." And he turned toward the far corner of the basement where a small metal hatch sat half-buried behind stacks of old storage bins, so unnoticed that Anna had never even realized it existed. He knelt down, brushed away the dust, and pulled on the lever, but it didn't budge. His jaw tightened, and he whispered, "It's an access tunnel. Maintenance used it years ago." Anna stared in disbelief, her voice trembling. "Where does it go?" Marcus didn't look up as he pulled harder, muscles straining. "Out of the neighborhood if we're lucky, toward the creek on the other side of the fence." Before Anna could process that, a loud bang echoed from upstairs, the sound of a door being kicked open. She gasped, stumbling back, her voice cracking. "They're inside the basement entrance?" Marcus grabbed her arm gently but firmly, pulling her closer to the hatch, urgency rising in his voice. "Help me move this." Together they shoved the storage bins aside, dust filling the air, making Anna cough as fear tightened around her ribs. Above them, voices echoed, cold, aggressive, confident. "Check every room. She's here somewhere. Don't leave until you find them." Anna felt tears spill down her cheeks as she whispered, "They sound so calm." Marcus nodded grimly. "Because they think they've already won." He gave the hatch one final pull, and with a metal groan it snapped open, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel leading into pitch blackness. The air that drifted out was cold, damp, carrying the smell of dirt and old pipes, but right now it felt like hope, the only chance they had left. Marcus shined the dying flashlight into the tunnel, his voice low. "We go now." Anna stared into the darkness, her breath shaking. "What if it's dangerous?" Marcus met her eyes, his voice filled with a painful honesty. "Staying here is more dangerous." Another stomp shook the floor above them, closer, heavier, right above the basement door. A man's voice barked, "Break it." Anna's heart stopped. Marcus pushed her gently toward the hatch. "Go." She shook her head, fear locking her in place. "Not without you." He nodded. "I'm right behind you." With trembling hands, she lowered herself into the tunnel, the cold earth squeezing around her shoulders as she crawled forward. Marcus followed, pulling the hatch closed behind them just as the basement door above exploded open with a violent crash. In the tunnel, darkness wrapped around them like a second skin. The flashlight flickered again, sputtering weakly, barely lighting the narrow path. Anna's breath echoed loudly in her ears, mixing with the distant thuds of boots hitting the basement floor above. Marcus whispered, "Keep moving. Slow. Quiet." Anna crawled forward, her knees scraping against the ground, her palms shaking as she navigated through the tight space. Every sound above felt closer. Voices barking orders, heavy boots spreading across the basement, the metallic clank of weapons being handled. She whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "This can't be real. It feels like a nightmare." Marcus's voice drifted behind her, calm but laced with urgency. "It's real, and that's why we have to survive it." Suddenly, the flashlight died completely, plunging them into absolute darkness. Anna froze, her breath catching in her throat, panic flooding her chest like ice. She whispered, terrified, "Marcus, I can't see." He reached forward, his hand gently touching her ankle, grounding her. "I'm here. Keep crawling. The tunnel is straight. Just follow the wall." She nodded shakily, wiping her tears with her sleeve, forcing her shaking body forward. Above them, faint but chilling, they heard a voice echo through the floorboards. "The basement is empty. They're hiding." Another voice responded, "Find the tunnel. The old houses have one." Anna's blood turned to ice. They knew. They weren't guessing. They were following, hunting. Her breath came faster, fear clawing at her throat. She whispered, "They're coming after us." Marcus's answer was sharp, "Then we stay ahead." The tunnel took a slight turn, and Anna crawled faster, adrenaline pushing her forward even as tears blurred her vision. She could feel the ground sloping upward, meaning they were getting closer to an exit. But then she heard it, a muffled thud. Another. Someone had dropped into the tunnel behind them. Marcus tensed, his voice dropping into a whisper made of iron. "They're in the tunnel." Anna's heart nearly stopped, dread flooding her veins. She crawled faster, her breath turning into desperate gasps, fingers clawing at the dirt. Marcus whispered urgently, "I see light ahead. Keep going." Anna squinted, and faintly, just faintly, she saw a tiny sliver of moonlight coming through a grate at the end of the tunnel. Hope surged through her chest, pushing her forward. But the footsteps behind them grew louder, closer, approaching with terrifying certainty. Marcus moved faster, pushing her gently. "Go, Anna. Don't stop." She reached the metal grate, grabbing it with trembling hands, pulling hard, but it wouldn't move. Panic exploded inside her. "It's stuck." Marcus squeezed beside her in the narrow space, his voice fierce. "Move aside." He braced his hands and shoved with all his strength, muscles straining, veins tight, face tense. The metal groaned but held firm. Behind them, footsteps scraped against the tunnel floor. A flashlight beam flickered in the darkness behind, hunters closing in. Anna cried, "Marcus, please." He pushed harder, letting out a low grunt of effort, and finally, with a violent clang, the grate popped open, crashing onto the grass outside. Cold night air rushed in, brushing Anna's face like freedom itself. Marcus shoved her upward, whispering, "Go! Go now!" Anna scrambled out into the wet grass, collapsing under the open sky, gasping for breath. Marcus pulled himself out right behind her just as a hand reached from the tunnel, grabbing the edge of the opening. Marcus slammed the grate shut with a heavy kick, locking it back into place. A muffled voice cursed from inside the tunnel, fists pounding against the metal. Anna stared at Marcus, shaking uncontrollably, her voice barely a whisper. "We got out." Marcus nodded, chest rising with heavy breaths. "We're out of the house, not out of danger." They crawled farther from the grate, hiding behind bushes near the creek. Anna looked around. The neighborhood fence was just ahead. Marcus pulled out the USB drive, gripping it tightly, his voice steady but dark with purpose. "Once this gets to the right hands, their power is over." Anna wiped her tears, her voice small but fierce. "Then we run." Marcus nodded. But just as they stood, headlights flashed behind them. Another vehicle turning into the neighborhood. Not HOA. Not military. Something else. Something unknown. And in that blinding moment, Anna felt the truth slam into her heart. The blinding headlights froze Anna in place, her breath trapped in her chest, her heart pounding so violently she thought it might tear through her ribs. and Marcus instinctively stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body as the vehicle rolled to a slow, threatening stop on the wet pavement, engine rumbling like a growl in the darkness. The doors didn't open at first, and that silence was somehow worse than footsteps or shouting, because it felt like the moment right before a trap snaps shut. Anna clutched Marcus's arm, her voice cracking in a terrified whisper. "Is it them?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He watched the car carefully, his eyes narrowed, his muscles tense, every part of him ready for a fight. Then, finally, the driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, not in black clothing like the others, not in HOA uniform, but in a formal suit, a badge glinting under the moonlight. He raised his hands slowly to show he wasn't armed. Marcus's breath eased just slightly, and he whispered, "Federal agent." The agent approached cautiously, his voice firm but calm. "Sergeant Hale, we've been trying to reach you. Command said your signal went dark." Marcus stood tall, soaked in mud and sweat, his voice steady. "The HOA jammed communications. They breached a civilian home. They attempted to detain us." The agent's eyes hardened, shock shifting into anger. "We suspected internal corruption. But this—" He looked toward the houses, the gates, the still streets, like he was seeing the neighborhood for the first time. Not as homes, but as a controlled cage. Anna stepped forward shakily, holding onto Marcus for support, her voice trembling. "They broke into my house. They chased us. They tried to—" Her voice cracked, emotion choking her. The agent nodded gently. "You're safe now. We're here." But as if the night refused to let her feel safe, engines roared from the other end of the street. More HOA vehicles speeding toward them, headlights slicing through the darkness, doors slamming, boots hitting pavement. The HOA president emerged, rage twisting his face, shouting, "Step away from them! They are trespassing! They are criminals!" Anna flinched. Marcus stepped closer to the agent and held up the USB drive like a weapon made of truth. "This contains proof. Harassment. Fraud. Forced removals." The HOA president laughed. A cold, bitter sound. "That information is confidential property. Hand it over." Marcus stared him down with a fire Anna had never seen before. "It's evidence, and it's going to the government." The president's mask shattered. His voice turned vicious, desperate. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. We built this neighborhood. We control it." The agent stepped forward, his voice sharp as steel. "Not anymore." He lifted his radio. "Activate warrant authorization." Seconds later, dozens of unmarked cars poured into the neighborhood, blocking streets, surrounding the HOA vehicles, agents stepping out, guns drawn. Not for Anna, not for Marcus, but for the people who once ruled through fear. The HOA president backed away, shaking his head, screaming, "You can't do this. We own this land." Marcus stepped forward, voice calm but deadly. "No, you stole it." At that moment, the basement tunnel grate in the distance rattled violently, and one of the HOA enforcers crawled out, dirt-covered, sprinting toward the president like a cornered animal. "They got the drive," he yelled. The president's face twisted with panic, his voice cracking. "Stop them! Get the drive!" But it was too late. The agent took the USB from Marcus's hand, sliding it into a secure case, sealing it with government authority. "It's done," he said. "This entire HOA is under investigation." Agents swarmed the president, grabbing his arms as he thrashed wildly, screaming threats. "You think helping that soldier will save you? You think anyone will care about some simple woman? She's nothing." Anna's heart broke, but not from his insult. From the truth she finally understood. She had spent her whole life thinking she was small, unnoticed, powerless. But one act of kindness, stepping into the rain for a stranger, had become the spark that burned down an empire built on fear. Marcus walked to her, his voice soft but full of pride. "You didn't just help me. You changed everything." She looked up at him, tears spilling freely. "I was so scared." He nodded gently. "Courage isn't living without fear. It's doing the right thing even when you're afraid." The HOA board members were handcuffed, escorted into cars, their confident faces now pale, broken, defeated. Neighbors peeked from their windows, watching the fall of the people they had feared for years, watching a neighborhood finally breathe. A woman from across the street stepped outside, clutching her young son, whispering shakily to Anna, "Thank you, we wanted to speak up, but we were scared." One by one, more neighbors emerged, silent, tearful, relieved, as if a heavy weight had finally been lifted from their chests. As dawn broke, the neighborhood didn't look like a prison anymore. It looked alive, free. Marcus stood with Anna near the creek, the first sunlight touching their faces. The agent approached, offering Anna a small card. "You'll be contacted as a key witness, and you'll be protected." Anna took it with trembling fingers, nodding, still processing the reality that she, a woman who once lived quietly in the background, was now the reason truth had been set free. Marcus turned to her, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "I came here for justice, but I didn't expect to find hope." Anna wiped her eyes, smiling through tears. "I didn't expect to be part of something this big." Marcus looked at her with warmth, respect, gratitude. "The world doesn't change because of loud people. It changes because of brave ones." She took a shaky breath. "What happens now?" Marcus glanced at the sunrise, the destroyed rulebook of the HO, the freed neighborhood, and said softly, "Now life begins again." And for the first time since the storm, Anna felt the weight lift from her heart. She wasn't just a simple woman anymore. She was the woman who stood up when everyone else stayed silent. The woman who helped a stranger and uncovered the truth. The woman whose small act of kindness knocked down a giant. The neighborhood was free.